Welcome back to another powerful episode of Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the real conversations about intimacy, desire, and the truths that we are all living, but not always saying out loud. So, today's episode is not just about the pleasure, it's all about breaking one of the last big taboos in men's health, like male enhancement. Yeah. So, why is this still whispered about like it's some guilty secret? Like, why are men made to feel shame for wanting to feel confident, perform better, and take control of their sexual health? And most importantly, how is this silence doing more harm than good? Right? So, to unpack it all, I'm joined by someone who refuses to play small in this conversation, literally and figuratively. Please welcome Sam Itshaki. So, welcome to the show, Sam.
Hi, Avik. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for that warm introduction.
Amazing. So, dear listeners,
Yeah,
yeah,
so I
please.
think you touched on a few important topics. Yeah, so sexuality in general is not something that guys talk about with the friends. Unlike women, women talk about a lot. Yeah, and unfortunately, that means that men silently. They
Mm,
just one example is they don't know how many other men have problems. So just erectile dysfunction, for example, is something that affects about 50% of the population um,
mm,
around the age by the age of 50. And so again, by the age of 50, fifty
mm,
percent of men report having some symptoms of erectile dysfunction. And as we know, not all men are even open to talk about. So the numbers could be even higher. Um, yeah, and unfortunately, because men don't talk about, they don't know that there are so many other men who have this kind of issue.
mm.
So yeah, I love that there are platforms like your podcast where you're just bringing out in the open,
Yeah,
so that men can know what's going on.
very true. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, definitely, we're trying to create this awareness for sure. And so, like, I'll come to you. Like, you have built your whole brand on being open about something most men won't even whisper to the doctor, also. So, why do you think
Right.
that the topic of male enhancement is still such a taboo in 2025?
It's hard to tell. I think it's
Mhm,
definitely something social.
mhm,
I think a part of it maybe is that uh, penis size is a taboo thing, and guys are a little competitive. I think it could stem from that. But in general, men are not exactly known for asking for help whenever they have any kind of issue. So it's not just sexuality. I would say it's, in general, men are known to not go to the doctor when they have a problem. Nothing to do with sex.
mhm.
So I think that's one thing. Yeah, and I think sexuality as a whole, when it comes to society, it's something that's a little taboo, and so it just makes things so much worse, especially
Mm,
when it comes to those kind of problems.
exactly. Yeah, very true. And uh, okay, and do you think that this silence is actually creating more performance anxiety and mental health issues than the topic itself?
Yeah, yeah. That's what happens when people don't share. Uh, you know,
Mhm,
um, when people share their problems, they realize, oh, there are other people out there just like me who have the same issues, and so they don't feel as bad about because they realize it's something that's completely normal, right? I think, yeah, I think that's kind of a big deal, which is why it's so important talk about those issues out in the open, not just with your doctor, which is something that even that people are ashamed. People men are still ashamed talking with their doctor about, let alone their friends. And yeah, speaking to friends, speaking about in general, just normalizes the conversation. So it's something I think is very important that we start doing, and that's why I'm out there talking about those kind of topics.
Very true. Yep. And like, I think a lot of our listeners, men and women, will realize that taboo is not uh, protecting anyone. I mean, it's just stopping people from getting that help they actually need. So that's a very important message I'd like to share. And also, like, you started out as a frustrated customer, right? So, what was the exact moment that you decided, enough, I'm going to fix this industry?
Yeah. So I started out of curiosity. I had a free weekend one day, and I decided to just walk into an adult store for the first time in my life, and just kind of explore. I didn't know what I was going to get. I didn't know that I was going to end up getting a penis pump. Yeah, but I walked in and I saw this giant pump that made me very curious about. I thought it was hilarious, but also I was curious about what could be the benefits of using something like that. And so I ended up getting it. And unfortunately, there was a very cheap product, and so it broke after a few minutes of use. But I saw firsthand what it could do. Just every time I pump, I saw my penis just gets bigger, and I pump, and it just, you know, gets inflated again and again and again. And so I knew there was something there. So even though it broke and I was all disappointed, I realized that I found something so cool that I was more excited than anything. And so I ended up getting another pump and another pump. I just figured I need to find the right device. So fast forward to today, I tried 39 different pumps, and I've developed my own multiple different pumps. Um, yeah. So again, I this is something I started out of curiosity, and being out there. So about 10 years ago, I became the CEO of the Dr. Joel Kaplan Company, and I've helped over 100,000 men improve their confidence and performance in the bedroom through the use of such devices like penis pumps, extenders, things like that. And I've learned a lot along the way. I've seen the taboo that's out there. I've seen how easy it is sometimes to fix someone's problem. Um, just as an example, my friend back then, before I was the CEO of this company, when I was just experimenting with pumps, I had a good friend who came over to hang out, and I just shared with him, hey, I've been trying a pump, and it's to say the least very interesting. And so he opened up to me and he shared that he had a problem with erectile dysfunction. At the time, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know anything about. But he tried to have a relationship with someone a few times. The first time, it didn't work. He was ashamed. He felt terrible. By the third time, he made a conscious decision to just never date again. He just this guy was in his 20s, and he just made this you know, life decision that he's just not going to date because he couldn't get up a few times. And so I've seen firsthand the kind of impact it can have on someone's uh, confidence, excuse me. And so, yeah, I recommended that he start using a pump. And for him, the interesting part is that for him, it was very obviously something psychological because he could get it up when he masturbates, but when there's someone there with him, he had issues. But for some reason, just trying a pump just gave him back that confidence. And so it worked for him. And so I've seen firsthand how how it affects your confidence and how amazing the benefits are when you fix it.
That's really amazing, I'd say. Yeah. And um, at the same time, the male enhancement, uh, the male enhancement space is actually flooded with the gimmicks and the empty promises also sometimes.
Yes.
I'm not saying like every time, but yes, sometimes. So how do you cut through that noise for men who are looking for real results?
Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. I get those kind of emails too. Hey, take this pill for 3 days and you'll grow 5 inches. I mean, things that, uh, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, right? You know that it's scam, and so yeah, the industry is full of scams. I would say it's mostly scams, and that's so unfortunate because there are things out there that do work. So I know from personal experience that there are certain devices. I'm not talking about supplements now. There are certain devices that work. I know it from personal experience. I know it from the experience of over 100,000 customers that I have helped. I also, a few years ago, I made this web app called PumpSmart, where people who use my devices can actually log whenever they use them, and they can log their measurements. And so I have thousands of users, and I did it for the consumer. I want to prove to people that, hey, if you do this regularly, you will increase in size. You will have better and healthier erections. And so I built it for the people. And fast forward a few years, I have thousands of users, and it's very obvious to see the correlation between usage and increase in size, increase in rigidity. And so the benefits, the long-term benefits are there when used correctly, of course.
So, like, uh, I mean, if you can share one myth that you wish you could, uh, I mean, it remains with you forever.
Yeah, actually, one good myth is all of those
Mhm.
supplements that you see online that simply don't work. Like the kind of promises they make. You take this pill and you'll gain like a few inches in a few days. I mean, it's it's unreasonable to believe. Like it's common sense to not believe such a claim. But there are so many pills like that. And it's just completely false. There are known things that work, things like pumps, things like extenders, things like there are medications that help, not with size necessarily, but with erection rigidity, right? Like Viagra and Cialis. Um, uh, they work for most people. I personally don't recommend that people start using them until they absolutely have to because they stop working eventually. But yeah, there are solutions out there that work. Unfortunately, there are many, many solutions that don't. There are companies that pop up one day and they close down 6 months later because it was a scam. And so the industry is full of those kind of scams. And it's unfortunate because it gives all the viable, real solution, bad rep. And so people end up not believing anything. And it's too bad.
Understood. Understood. Amazing. And like, uh, do you find that many men's issues in the bedroom starts in the mind and not the body? What do you think?
Oh, I think depending on age, you can really group people based on age because the younger crowd is definitely more affected by performance anxiety. The story of my friend was the perfect example how someone in their 20s who has no physical issues whatsoever can have a problem to the point where he'll make this you know, life-changing decision to never date again. He's willing to write off finding his life's partner. He's willing to write off love. He's willing to write off intimacy and sex. He's just willing to just say no to everything because he felt embarrassed. And so, yeah, the younger crowd is definitely more affected by performance anxiety. But when it comes to anyone who's over, let's say, 35, no, there are actually physical reasons why people have issues, and the number one reason has to do with blood flow. So as we get older, we end up having a little bit of plaque buildup in our arteries. This is something that's completely normal. It's something that people hear, but not in the context of sexual wellness, right? People hear things like, "Oh, don't eat too much beef or too many eggs." Whether or not it's true is a different story. But we're all exposed to it to some degree, but not uh, with the context of sexual wellness. We're exposed to it in the context of heart health, for example. But it's all related, right? Um, this is the cardiovascular system, and so it affects a lot of different things. Now, the penis and the feet are two areas where in your body where you get very, very little blood flow, which is why people have cold feet, right? That's a good example. So when the penis is flaccid, it actually gets very little blood flow. And even when someone is sexually active, how many minutes, how many hours do they get of an erection per day? So we have what's called nocturnal erections that we get at night. That's something that pretty much everyone has, and if they don't, they would have erectile dysfunction. And so we get some of that at night. And if someone's sexually active, let's say they have on average sex a few times a week, it's just not enough. And so that's where pump play a really great role. Um, and so I believe that anyone over the age of 35 should just use a penis pump twice a week for 10 minutes. Think of it like we all brush our teeth, and we don't do it to prevent cavities. By the time you need to prevent a cavity, it could be too late. We use it as a preventative measure. And so it's the same thing with penis pump. If you use a penis pump twice a week for 10 minutes, you end up preventing blood flow issues. You end up preventing atrophy and shrinkage. And so here are some stats that is very relevant here. So by the age of 50, like I said, 50% of men report some form of erectile dysfunction. Another thing that most people should know is that by the age of 60, you can lose up to 20% of your penis size. And that just happened through atrophy. When you don't use something, you lose it. That's the general principle with anything with our body, right? You don't move enough, you lose range of motion. It's the same idea. And so it's important to stay sexually active for the sake of your relationship, for the sake of your health. And it's important to use something like a penis pump to bring blood flow regularly to the area to prevent such problems.
That's amazing. So, um, so are there any daily habits or practices that make the biggest difference long term?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Like any daily habits or practices that actually makes the biggest difference for long term?
Yeah, so I think staying sexually active is very, very important because you have to use it to keep maintain function. That's important. Eating healthy is important. I'm not someone who's against red meat or anything. I believe in eating what what we have been eating for a very long time, what our ancestors have been eating. I think overeating could be the problem, meaning red meat is not bad, but if you eat a lot of red meat every day, just the availability of food nowadays is very different than how it used to be. And so I think our body evolved around certain circumstances, around not always having food available. And so, yeah, I think eating healthy is extremely important. So, things like avoid sugar, definitely avoid alcohol. That is the number one reason for people. When people have an erection issue that night, I'm not even talking about long term here. Yeah, alcohol is the number one reason, number one cause for having erection issues. Um, yeah, so stay away from sugar, stay away from alcohol. Just eat healthy and don't overdo it. I think that's very important for blood flow in general. And it happens to be that the penis is very sensitive to blood flow issues. And so, if you have even a minor blood flow issue, you may not necessarily notice it anywhere in your life, but your penis will be the first thing, the first indication for poor blood flow. Yeah, stretching helps too.
Mm. That's amazing. Like, uh, and also, like, do you think our cultural definition of masculinity needs to evolve to make the conversations like this normal?
Yeah, I think it's very important. Like we said at the beginning, it's when people don't talk about, they don't end up getting the right information. And so they don't, they may be ashamed for having a problem with erectile dysfunction. They may be ashamed that the perception of their penis size is smaller. And notice how I said perception because, um, you know, it's not just size that matters. It's also the perception, right? When we feel that we're big and great, that really adds to our confidence. When we have problems in the bedroom and we can't get up, it really hurts our confidence. And so I think that's part of masculinity. Just like when people go to the gym, how gym gives you confidence. This is very this is the same situation. Having a great erection gives you confidence. Pleasuring your partner, makes you confidence. Um, Guys are very competitive by nature. I don't think we even realize it, but we always want to be our partner's best. And knowing that she had someone better is, hurts her ego. And so I think that should be part of the conversation. I think people should really think about as, this is the penis, this is the gym for your penis. I tell people to pump on leg day. That's your third leg. Just it's very important to have it on a routine, so at least once or twice a week, like use a penis pump. And so I think leg day is you know, a great symbolism.
Hmm. I mean, that's a great uh, suggestion. I believe. Yeah. Uh, Lovely. That's amazing. So, Sam, thank you so much for this.
You know, um,
Uh,
if you don't mind, I would love to just add one thing, assuming you have enough time. Um, one thing is also unfortunate is just the medical establishment, at least here in the U.S. I don't know how it is in India, but um, there are only very few solutions that are covered by insurance, and that means when you go to a doctor, it's all business driven, right? And so I believe doctors are out there really to help people. Their intentions are in the right place, but because of insurance companies, because who's going to pay for it, right? And so when someone has a problem and they do go to the urologist, the first thing they do is to prescribe, a pill. And I'm seeing a trend where it's easier and easier to gain access to those kind of pills, right? I'm talking about PDE5 inhibitors, things like Viagra and Cialis. And so I'm seeing more and more people being prescribed those pills, and I see uh, the younger crowd being prescribed those pills, and they don't really have a physical problem. They just have something psychological usually. And so I think this is something, I hear a lot from customers. I hear a lot from people who just text me on social media and just tell me about their problem. Um, and there are a lot of people where the pills, the medications just don't work for them. And there are so many people that tell me that the medication used to work for them, but now it doesn't. And that's the thing about medications. It's very normal for pretty much any medication to become less effective over time as your body gets used to things. And so when it comes to urologists, there are basically three solutions that they have to offer. One is the medications, which they're very quick to prescribe. From there, there is an injection that you have to use every time you want to have sex. And it's obviously painful. It's not something that people usually want to do. They just do it because they don't have a choice. And when that stops working, the next solution is to undergo surgery, to put an inflatable device inside your penis. And so this is something you want to really, all of those things are things you want to stay away for as long as possible. I'm not against using every tool in your toolbox. I just think it's best to delay for as long as possible. And so if you can prevent, in general, when it comes to health, preventing issues is way more effective than correcting them, right? And so, yeah, using a penis pump is one great way. There are other solutions out there. Things like, I don't know if you ever heard of shock wave or acoustic wave to break the plaque in the penis. There's something called PRP. It's a once a year injection to just rejuvenate things with stem cells. And so there are other solutions out there. And so the one thing I want to say, just to offer value to your audience, is if you have any problems whatsoever, and it doesn't have to be that you can't get up, it can be just think about your erections today and how they used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago. If they're not the same, just know that this is something that can be improved through the use of pumps, through the use of non-invasive surgery procedures, excuse me. Um, yeah, and so search for other solutions out there. Don't just go to your doctor and get medications because that's for later. Save it for later, for when nothing else works. I think that's what I want to leave your audience with.
It's amazing, and thank you so much for sharing this, because this is really really great. And um, I'd love to say that, dear listeners, if today's episode has sparked something in you, just don't fade it. Be on it, and also connect with Sam through Get Mr. Bigger Now and Dr. Joel Kaplan Company to learn more about safe, science-backed methods that actually work. So with this hope, until next
Um,
time, yeah,
yeah, they can reach me at either Mr. Get Bigger Now on every social network or getbiggernow.com. All the information is there.
yeah, perfect. I'll put all the links into the show notes for easy reference, dear listeners. And with this hope, until next time, see you soon and have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.